From scrambled eggs to fried eggs and even boiled eggs, most people feel confident they know exactly how to cook them. It's one of the first things many of us learn in the kitchen. But here's the surprising part. Many of the habits people use when cooking eggs aren't actually the right thing to do. In fact, they often do the opposite. Cooking eggs on heat that's too high can make the whites rubbery. Poor mixing can leave scrambled eggs dense instead of soft. Leaving eggs too long in boiling water can dry out the yolk and strip away the texture and nutrients people expect. These are just a few of the small habits that change how eggs taste, how they feel when you eat them, and even how much of their natural nutrients remain intact. So in this video, we're breaking down the biggest mistakes Britons commonly make when cooking eggs and showing exactly how they should be done so the final result isn't ruined. How to mix eggs properly for scrambled eggs. One of the first mistakes happens before the pan even touches the hob. It begins with how the eggs are mixed. In many kitchens, people crack 2 or 3 eggs into a bowl and give them a quick stir with a fork. Sometimes the yolk breaks, sometimes it barely mixes with the whites, and within a few seconds the eggs are already heading into the pan. It feels like a small step that doesn't matter very much, but the way eggs are mixed plays a bigger role than most people realize. Eggs are made of 2 very different parts. The yolk is rich and fatty, while the white is mostly protein and water. When they are not mixed properly, those 2 parts cook at different speeds once they reach the heat. That's why poorly mixed scrambled eggs often look uneven. Some parts turn soft and yellow, while other parts stay pale or become slightly rubbery. Instead of cooking smoothly, the eggs break into patches with different textures. Proper mixing prevents that. When eggs are whisked thoroughly, the yolks and whites combine into one uniform mixture. This allows the eggs to cook evenly once they reach the pan. The result is scrambled eggs that feel softer, creamier, and much more consistent from the first bite to the last. In professional kitchens and breakfast cafes, eggs are almost always whisked properly before they are cooked. It's a simple step, but it ensures the yolk and white cook together instead of fighting against each other. That is one of the reasons scrambled eggs served in restaurants often feel smoother and softer than the ones many people make at home. The process itself is simple. Crack the eggs into a bowl first instead of directly into the pan. Use a fork or whisk and beat them for about 20 to 30 seconds. By the time you finish, you should no longer see clear streaks of egg white or thick patches of yolk. The mixture should look smooth and evenly yellow. Some cooks also add a small pinch of salt at this stage. Salt helps loosen the egg proteins slightly, which can make the final texture softer once the eggs begin to cook. It might seem like a small detail, but it quietly sets the foundation for everything that happens next. If the eggs start uneven, they will cook uneven too, no matter how carefully they are handled in the pan. And once the eggs are mixed properly, the next thing that determines whether scrambled eggs turn soft or rubbery comes down to something many people rush without thinking. Why cooking scrambled eggs? Too fast ruins the texture. Once the eggs are mixed, the next mistake usually happens the moment the pan touches the hob. In many kitchens, the heat goes up immediately. The pan gets hot quickly, the eggs are poured in, and the goal becomes finishing breakfast as fast as possible. It feels efficient, especially on busy mornings when there isn't much time to stand around waiting for eggs to cook slowly. But scrambled eggs don't behave well under sudden heat. Behave. Eggs are delicate. The proteins inside them begin to tighten the moment they are exposed to high temperatures. When the pan is too hot, those proteins contract very quickly, squeezing moisture out of the eggs before they have time to cook gently. That's when scrambled eggs start to lose their softness. Instead of forming smooth, tender curds, the eggs break apart into smaller, firmer pieces. The texture becomes dry and slightly rubbery, even if the eggs still look yellow and fully cooked on the plate. This is one of the reasons scrambled eggs often feel very different at home compared to those served in cafes or restaurants. In professional kitchens, scrambled eggs are rarely cooked over aggressive heat. Chefs usually cook them on low to medium heat and allow them to set slowly. This slower process gives the egg proteins time to form soft curds without squeezing out all their natural moisture. The difference in texture is noticeable. Scrambled eggs cooked gently stay soft, slightly creamy and tender. The curds hold together smoothly instead of breaking into dry pieces. Even the flavor improves because the eggs retain more of their natural richness. Cooking scrambled eggs this way also gives you more control. When the heat is too high, the eggs cook so quickly that there's very little time to react. But when the heat is moderate, you can watch the eggs gradually thicken and decide exactly when they are ready. The simple rule many professional kitchens follow is this: scrambled eggs should cook slowly enough that you can control their texture as they form. Once the eggs begin to set gently, you can stir them lightly and allow soft curds to develop. But when the heat is pushed too high from the start, that control disappears almost instantly. And while heat determines the texture of scrambled eggs, the next set of problems often appears when people move on to frying eggs, where the temperature of the pan can completely change how the egg cooks the moment it hits the surface. How to fry eggs properly, the right pan, fat, and temperature. When frying eggs at home, many people start the same way. The pan goes on the hob, the heat is turned up quickly, butter or oil is dropped into the pan, and the egg follows almost immediately. At first it seems fine, but that quick start often creates the problems people notice later. When the pan is too hot, the egg white tightens the moment it hits the surface. The edges bubble and cook too fast while the center of the white is still trying to set. This is why many fried eggs end up uneven, with burnt edges and parts of the white that feel tougher than they should. The type of pan also plays a role. Eggs should be fried in a non-stick frying pan. The smooth surface allows the egg to cook evenly and lift cleanly without tearing. When the pan surface is rough or worn out, the egg white sticks and breaks apart when you try to move it. The fat used in the pan also matters. Butter is often preferred because it spreads easily and gives the egg a richer flavor. When it melts slowly, it creates a thin layer that helps the egg cook gently. Some kitchens use a small amount of cooking oil instead, especially if they want slightly crisp edges. But the key is not the amount of fat, it is the temperature. Instead of heating the pan aggressively, the better approach is to let the pan warm gradually on medium heat. Once the butter melts or the oil warms and lightly coats the surface, the egg can be cracked into the pan. At the right temperature, the egg should produce a soft, steady sizzle rather than loud popping. The white will begin to set evenly from the bottom, while the yolk stays intact in the center. This is the balance professional kitchens aim for: a pan that is warm enough to cook the egg, but not so hot that it forces the egg to cook too quickly. When the right pan, the right fat, and the right temperature come together, fried eggs become much easier to control. The next factor that determines the final result comes down to something even simpler. Should you flip a fried egg or leave the yolk soft? Once the egg is cooking in the pan, another question often comes up. Should the egg be flipped and cooked on both sides, or should it be left with the yolk facing up? In many homes, people flip the egg almost immediately. The idea is to cook both sides quickly so the egg finishes faster, but flipping the egg changes how the yolk cooks. When an egg is flipped and cooked on both sides, the yolk usually becomes fully firm. The heat from the pan cooks the yolk completely, turning it solid rather than soft. Some people prefer this style, but it also means the egg is exposed to more heat than necessary. In many breakfast restaurants, chefs often leave the egg unflipped. Instead, they cook it gently on one side until the white is fully set, while the yolk stays soft in the center. Sometimes a lid is placed briefly over the pan, so a little steam helps the top of the egg cook without needing to flip it. This approach keeps the egg more delicate. The yolk stays warm and creamy instead of hard, and the egg cooks with less direct heat overall. Because the yolk is not exposed to the hot pan surface, it also retains more of its natural nutrients and flavor. Timing is still important. A typical fried egg cooked this way usually needs about 2 to 3 minutes on moderate heat. During that time, the white firms up while the yolk remains soft. If someone prefers the yolk fully cooked, the egg can be flipped for a short moment at the end. But for many kitchens, leaving the egg unflipped is the more balanced method. It produces a fried egg with a fully cooked white, a soft center, and a texture that stays tender rather than dry. And once frying is understood, the next set of mistakes often appears when people move from the frying to something that seems much simpler: boiling eggs. Should you start boiling eggs in cold water or drop them into hot water? When it comes to boiling eggs, one of the most common questions people grow up with is very simple. Do you start the eggs in cold water and let everything heat together, or do you wait for the water to boil first and then drop the eggs in? Many households do it the second way. The water is brought to a rolling boil and the eggs are placed into the pot afterwards. It seems faster and more direct, but this method is actually one of the reasons boiled eggs often crack or cook unevenly. Eggs coming straight from the fridge are cold. When a cold egg is dropped into aggressively boiling water, the sudden temperature change can shock the shell. That shock causes small cracks to form, and once that happens, the egg white begins leaking out into the water. You've probably seen it before, thin white strands floating in the pot while the egg is boiling. That's the egg white escaping through a cracked shell. Even when the shell doesn't crack, another problem still happens. The outside of the egg begins cooking immediately because the water is already at full boiling temperature while the center of the egg is still cold. That difference in temperature makes it harder for the egg to cook evenly from the inside out. This is why many kitchen professionals use a different method. Instead of starting with boiling water, they place the eggs into the pot first and cover them with cold water. The water should sit about an inch above the eggs so they are fully submerged. Once the eggs are in the pot, the heat is turned on and the water is allowed to warm gradually. As the water heats, the eggs warm up slowly as well. The shell, the egg white, and the yolk all adjust to the temperature together. This gradual heating process greatly reduces the chances of cracking and allows the egg to cook more evenly once the water reaches boiling point. In many professional kitchens, this is considered the more controlled way to boil eggs. It doesn't shock the egg with sudden heat, and it gives the cook more predictable result. Once the water finally reaches a gentle boil, that's when the timing truly begins. Before we move on to the timing part, if you're finding this breakdown helpful so far, take a moment to support the channel. Give the video a like and subscribe if you haven't already. It helps more people discover these everyday cooking tips, and it lets us keep making videos that break down simple kitchen habits like this. The next mistake many people make when boiling eggs has nothing to do with the water itself. It comes down to how long the eggs are actually left to cook. How many minutes? Eggs should boil for the right texture. Many people simply leave the eggs in the pot while they finish other parts of breakfast. There's no clear timing involved. The eggs sit in the boiling water for several minutes, sometimes much longer than necessary. And by the time they are removed, the inside has already changed more than expected. Eggs cook quickly in boiling water, and even a few extra minutes can make a noticeable difference. For a soft-boiled egg, the goal is a fully set white with a warm, slightly runny yolk in the center. To achieve that texture, eggs usually need about 5 to 6 minutes once the water reaches a gentle boil. During that time, the egg white firms up around the yolk while the center remains soft and creamy. For a medium-boiled egg, where the yolk is slightly thicker but still tender, the cooking time is usually around 7 to 8 minutes. The yolk becomes more structured but still retains some softness. If the egg stays in the boiling water for 9 to 10 minutes or longer, the yolk becomes fully firm. This is the style many people know as a hard-boiled egg. However, leaving eggs in boiling water too long can create another problem many people have noticed before. The yolk may develop a grey or green ring around the outside. That ring forms when the egg is exposed to high heat for too long, which affects both the appearance and the texture. Professional kitchens usually control this by removing the eggs from the boiling water at the right time and transferring them into cold water immediately. The cold water stops the cooking process and prevents the eggs from continuing to cook inside the shell. That simple step keeps the yolk the color and texture people expect. So when boiling eggs, the timing does most of the work. Just a few minutes determines whether the egg is soft, medium, or fully firm. The final mistake many people make happens right after the boiling is finished. It's what they do with the eggs once they leave the hot water. Why eggs should be placed in cold water. After boiling. Once boiled eggs are finished cooking, many people remove them from the pot and leave them sitting on the counter or inside the empty saucepan. It seems harmless. After all, the cooking part is already done. But the heat inside the egg doesn't disappear the moment the water is poured away. Eggs hold heat for longer than most people expect. Even after they leave the boiling water, the temperature inside the shell continues to cook the egg from the inside. This is known as carryover cooking, and it can quietly change the texture of the egg within a few minutes. A soft-boiled egg can quickly become medium. A medium egg can become fully hard before it even reaches the plate. That's why many kitchens use a simple step to stop the cooking process immediately. As soon as the eggs finish boiling, they are transferred into a bowl of cold water or ice water. The sudden drop in temperature cools the egg quickly and stops the heat from continuing to cook the yolk. This step does more than protect the texture. Cooling the eggs also helps separate the egg from the shell slightly, which makes peeling much easier later. Anyone who has struggled with shells sticking stubbornly to the egg has likely skipped this step without realizing it. After about 5 minutes in cold water, the eggs are usually cool enough to handle, and the inside remains exactly as cooked as intended. It's a small step, but it prevents the egg from quietly overcooking after it leaves the pot. Once the eggs are cooked properly, whether scrambled, fried, or boiled, there is one final habit many people overlook that can still change the texture of the egg before it is served. Why eggs should be removed from heat before they look fully done. Waiting until the eggs look completely finished before removing them from the pan or pot is a mistake most people make. If the eggs still look soft, people assume they need more time. But eggs continue cooking even after the heat is removed. This happens because eggs hold heat inside their structure. Once the eggs are taken off the hob, the warmth inside the egg keeps the proteins tightening for a short period of time. That means an egg that looks perfect in the pan can quickly become overcooked by the time it reaches the plate. This is especially noticeable with scrambled eggs. If scrambled eggs stay in the pan until they look completely firm, they often turn dry within moments. Professional kitchens usually remove scrambled eggs while they still look slightly soft. As they sit for a few seconds, the remaining heat finishes cooking them naturally, leaving them tender instead of rubbery. The same idea applies to fried egg. If a fried egg stays in the pan until the yolk looks fully set, it will likely become firmer than expected by the time it is served. Removing it slightly earlier allows the heat already inside the egg to finish the process gently. Even boiled eggs benefit from this idea. Once the eggs are removed from hot water and cooled properly, they stop cooking at the right stage instead of continuing to harden inside the shell. Professional kitchens rely on this small adjustment constantly. They remove eggs just before they appear completely done because they understand the egg will finish cooking on its own. It's a simple change, but it prevents eggs from becoming dry, tough, or overcooked before they are eaten. When mixing, temperature, timing, and removal are all handled carefully, eggs become one of the easiest foods to cook consistently. And once you understand these small details, cooking eggs stops feeling unpredictable and starts becoming something you can control every time. If you found this helpful, give the video a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next breakdown. We'll keep exploring everyday foods and the small habits that quietly change how they turn out.